Wakefield, it's the Nolan Carr Night Show starring Nolan. I enjoy Nolan's guest this week, Ken Bell, to the show. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the show. With me this week, he is the former sportscaster for ABC 6 here in Rhode Island. He is the one and only Mr. Ken Bell. Ken, how's it going today?
Nolan, thank you. I'm doing great. We had a little flood going on out there today, so it's great to stay inside and watch sports, I guess.
Yeah, not too bad. I unfortunately, as a student, had to make the trek through the campus of URI, so wasn't fun coming home and taking off all the wet socks and wet pants. So, but we made it. Now that gives me a great appreciation for playing sports in the cold weather and the snow and whatnot.
Absolutely. So one of the things that happened in my career as it went on, we used to have photographers go out and shoot all the sports, and I would have to ask the news desk to have a photographer cover a sports story and just hope that one was available. And then we got to the point where, because of financial pressures, they laid a lot of the photographers off. And so I ended up the last maybe 6-7 years of my career shooting my own video.
There you go.
So that was good because I could get what I want.
Yeah.
That was bad because I was really obligated to be at the station between at least 4:30 and 6:30, to get the sportscast ready. So, and you work as a two-man team. There's a weekend person. So if you're fortunate if he's on, we try to arrange the days where we get the most out of him. But some days you're left stranded and you have to try to get the news desk to send a news photographer out to cover a story. And sometimes they don't know who the people are or how to cover it or whatever. So there were some challenges to it.
I'm sure you definitely have to stay calm, cool, and collective, and not stress out too much. Well, as I usually like to ask, obviously we're in some interesting times the last nearly almost 2 years. So for yourself, although you're not working, has it been any sort of easy for you during this pandemic to sort of just, relax and whatnot?
What's changed so much, Nolan, is that there's a different feeling out there among people. There's more isolation going on because we were forced to be separated. And that also kind of struck up some of the differences that we have in, politics, opinions. And so we're really in a different time right now than when I was working. There was a lot more cooperation. It seemed like, it was easy to cover events. Now, some of the events you just have to take off of video feeds. You're not even able to cover them. And if you talk to an athlete or something, they're normally, you get a long pole, put your microphone on. So the contact thing is a lot different. It's just more challenging to cover now. And also just the general politics of what's going on, masks and everything. And I'm sure you feel it being a college student too. It's just a little more difficult. People are kind of on the edge.
Yeah.
They're not as cooperative as the past, and the political views have kind of taken center stage instead of cooperation with each other. So it's a more challenging time. Absolutely.
And for you though, and you mentioned this briefly, and obviously it's present in today's situation politically and whatnot and all that jazz. As someone who has done this profession for many, many years, how do you make sure you're keeping your personal beliefs or whatever's going on out of your work instead of just, putting out that story?
It's so politically, you really have to work at that.
Yeah.
One thing about sports is, the way there are many more sportscasters that were more talented than I, but nobody who saw sports exactly the way I saw it.
Yeah.
So your idea is to get your personality, to get your view of things that kind of helps set you off from everybody else. And so I kind of like there were several things that were stories that I enjoyed and tried to pursue. There are many things you have to do just in generally covering sports, but when I got a chance to pick, I chose athletes who had overcome something.
Yeah.
Somebody who was able to show everybody that you can overcome bad things, overcome the odds, that when he was counted out, he was able to come back and win, or at least compete, come back from an injury, those kinds of things that inspire people. Taking your worst circumstances and turning them around by your attitude and your work ethic and demonstrating that there is encouragement and there's hope for everybody. And so those are my favorite stories. I did a story on Jason Pisano. He was a wheelchair athlete. And the way I discovered him, we did at Channel 6, we televised live the downtown 5K road race, which was 5 miles around the streets of downtown Providence. Right at the end of the 1-hour broadcast, we see a wheelchair athlete pushing himself backwards with 1 foot.
Wow.
And so then like 2 minutes later, we're off the air. It's the end of the show. Well, the next day I tracked him down. His name is Jason Pisano. And I went to his house, and he has cerebral palsy. I should say had cerebral palsy because he did pass away a number of years ago. But he had cerebral palsy, and he was able to join the track team at West Warwick High School. They allowed him to join, and he would go around the track pushing himself backwards with 1 foot. And that inspired the team. That gave him, a community to support him. Guys that were cheering him on, were encouraging him. And so that made all the difference in his life. Then he had the idea, he loved Vinny Pazienza, who was a boxer from Rhode Island, who had 51 career wins. So he said, I am going to do a marathon. I'm going to do the Boston Marathon. And he showed up about, it was maybe 10 p.m. And that would put him at the finish line maybe 12 or 13 hours, or maybe, I think it was 14 hours later. So he took it to court and won. And so the BAA had to create a category for him to be able to go backwards to the Boston Marathon. So he not only finished that one, he finished 52 in all, beating Vinny Paz's record. 52, the Ocean State Marathon, which was here in Rhode Island, all across Connecticut, all of these marathons, New York City Marathon. And in the meantime, he is inspiring people by his very determination to not let his disability stop him from doing what he wanted to do. So those are the kinds of stories that I like doing. Something that says something about the human spirit, something that says that when you dedicate yourself and you face the odds, that you can fight through it and accomplish something with your life.
Now, when I was doing my research, like any other person who has who's higher up in the world of this sort of field than myself, there was an article that Bill Reynolds had done on yourself when you were getting close to retiring, and it mentioned when you were younger, growing up in Denver, in Colorado, and it talked about how you would, when you were about 8 years old, you would pretend to do play-by-play for the Broncos. Yes. And there was I guess a speech class that you had when you were 10 or whatever, that you were scared about getting up and being nervous. For those moments, doing play-by-play as an 8-year-old against the Broncos or any other of those early moments that you remember, how much of those affected your dream or, your mission to become a sports journalist?
Good question, because in 8th grade, my whole life changed. I grew up, I never raised my hand in front of the class. I thought I'd make a stupid comment, or I'd make a fool out of myself. And I was just a nervous wreck in a class. I tried to hide. And then in 8th grade, we were forced to take a speech course. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to drop dead right in front of all my friends. So I remember being so nervous, standing up there, and my Adam's apple was going up and down, and my knees were kind of knocking. And I gave this little 3-minute speech, and I sat down, and I was so relieved.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you dummy, it wasn't anywhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. And not only that, I kind of unlocked something that I didn't know about myself. I actually had a gift for being able to speak. And so that changed my life. And I was thinking, when I would go into classes, many classes, I always look forward to talking to students, because the very thing you're afraid of might be the very thing you were made for.
Yeah.
If you fight through the fear and discover something about yourself, first of all, you've overcome an obstacle. And secondly, you might just discover the very thing that you were made to do.
Yeah.
And so I never would have been a sportscaster. I never would have spoken in front of people. I never would have had the chance to be able to speak to classes about overcoming fear, about public speaking, unless I had taken that speech course. That changed my life. And I've been in touch with that speech teacher since I have moved on. I'm 70 years old now, and every year I send her a Christmas card, and in between I have conversation with her. She changed my life. She said, "You have a gift that you don't know about, and you need to develop it." And so I think everybody, Nolan, I think everyone has something special about themselves. And I think the sad part is some people never look for it,
Yeah.
or some people don't pursue it when they find it. It's either too hard, or they think that they don't have the confidence to do it. But when you fight through the fear, you've not only learned something about yourself and can control that when you face other obstacles, but you might just find the very thing that you were made for that's going to bring you satisfaction. And at age 70, I look back on a 50-year career and said, this is what it was a dream, covering sports and an athlete. And really, it was a kind of a career that provided a lot of excitement and a lot of satisfaction.
I don't know if it's any connection to that, but it's like when I do this, for example, I mean, regardless of who it is, reaching out to someone, a very terrifying thing to do, because you have someone like myself who's a student, and then you're reaching out to whether it's someone like yourself or a coach or something like that, and you're nervous about reaching out, and then you're like, what am I afraid of? It's just a regular person. And then you get in contact, and then you're relieved that you're done with it. You may sweat through your shirt a little bit, but it's not that bad.
And you know why? You know why that's the case? Everybody started just like you.
Yeah.
Everybody started from the beginning. So everyone knows what it means to have to rely on others to try to, to show what you can do, to try to prove yourself. Everybody. So that's why people are receptive to having Nolan call, because they know that he is exactly where I was when I was your age. Actually, before that, I was dying to be on the air. I watched all the broadcasts, and I had my favorites, and I did play-by-play with the TV games and all that stuff. And then I would go to the high school games, sit up in the stands somewhere with a tape recorder and record the play-by-play. And then so my senior year in college, let me back up a little bit too. There's another part of the story here. I never could play sports. I had a curvature spine. So I went out for my junior high football team, my middle school football team, and I got down in the stands, and then my back started to hurt me. And they said, listen, you can't play. You need to go see the doctor first to see what's going on. So they said, you have a curvature spine, so you can't play. So I thought, oh man, how am I going to make it through the school day? That's what I look forward to at the end of the day. So I started to be a trainer, a manager for the team. I took care of jerseys and that kind of thing. And then when I went to high school, I worked in the training room, and the University of Colorado, which is where I finally ended up, the Colorado trainer came down to be with our high school team on game night. So I sat next to him, watched him. He taught me how to tape ankles, how to take care of injuries, gave me advice. I ended up going to the University of Colorado on a training scholarship to work with the football team, the basketball, the baseball team, to work in the training room. And then on top of that, I started to officiate. I umpired high school, semi-pro baseball. I refereed high school basketball. I set out to do as much to learn about the game without being able to play it as I could, being around the athletes and so forth. So my point to classes along my career was, look, there are other ways to get to your goal if the door is blocked. If the door is closed, try another door, try an end run.
For you, and sort of that same article that Bill did, it talked about how you put a lot of time into, in high school and college with sports and getting involved with that area. At least I think it was that article. So I was a trainer with the team. I umpired youth league games, refereed, and I also was a recreation director for 70 kids for the city. And we had a playground situation where we played games with them and had fun, took them on field trips and things like that. So I used really all my
opportunities to try to grow. I'm a man of faith, so I feel like there was a destiny for me.
Yeah.
I was put on this planet to do something, and so as I felt led, that's what I did. I felt I was working with people. I was trying to empower people, trying to encourage people. I think everybody has a gift.
Yeah.
Mine seems to center around wanting to encourage people, and so sports was a nice way to be able to do that by putting on stories about people, about teams, or whatever, to show the best of things. Now you have some, you have to report all the bad stuff too,
Yeah.
Deflategate and all that, but basically it's everybody has something special, and my job was to try to put their story on the air.
For you, when you were in college, when was that transition from trainer to then getting involved with reporting for sports in that sort of area?
2 years into college, the athletic director came and said, because I had to report on something that was, that only I would know.
Yeah.
I tried to hide it, but one of the guys left the team, and so I had to report it. So the coach was kind. He said, "Listen, it's time to make up your mind, whether you're going to be a trainer or whether you're going to be in the radio." So that's when I left the training room. I think it was 2 or 3 years. I went to college for 5 years.
Okay.
I was working at the radio station, training, and then also trying to go to school. So I think it was 3 years in. Then I launched.
What was that transition like for you getting involved in that aspect of sports? Was that, where you finally realized, not, I don't say finally, but you realized this is definitely where I want to be?
Yes. I think when I started to get a little traction, when I started to do play-by-play of the high school games, when they put me on a disc jockey show on the weekends, and then I was a fill-in guy at the local radio station. Boulder's a town of about 80,000. So it was a 1,000 watt day, 250 watts night, so it was, but it was on the air, and it was great.
Right.
I could develop my personality. I did all sorts of things, the sportscast, score shows, interview. So it was really a lesson in preparation, preparing myself for broadcasting. Then in the middle of my senior year, I'd heard of an opening in Denver for a weekend TV sportscaster. And right place, right time, my whole life changed. So I did Boulder radio and that weekend TV for a year. Then I went down to KOA in Denver, which is now KCNC, and I did radio and then weekend sports. Then I went to Cedar Rapids, Iowa to get on the air every night. And that's a smaller market, a market 70 at that time. Then I got the job there to come to Channel 10 here in Providence. So I worked at Channel 10 for 2.5 years. Then I went to Milwaukee for 3 to do something called PM Magazine, which is a kind of a feature show.
Okay.
And it was 135 markets around the country, and we swapped stories and things like that. Then after 3 years, I was kind of tired of that, and I really wanted to get back into sports.
Yeah.
And the co-anchor, John Sweeney at Channel 10, jumped over to 6 as the co-anchor and the news director. So he called me up and said, "I'm inviting myself to your wedding. I want to make a pitch for you to come back to Rhode Island." So I came back, and then I spent my last 35 years at Channel 6.
For you, and I've asked this to other sports or media people. Was it an easy transition for you when you were doing the weekend stuff as, an adult doing it, once you got out of college or even during, or was it something where it was a sort of easy thing for you?
No, I was a nervous wreck. I can remember being on the air that first time, and man, I had the jitters, and it really took quite a while because I was just on the weekends then. It took quite a while to be comfortable on camera, but through encouragement and through experience. The best thing about for anyone is experience. The more you're on, the more you do it, the better you are, right? So there was a time when I finally got comfortable. The times when I was not prepared, Nolan, were nervous wreck times.
I'm sure, yeah.
The more you're prepared, the better off you are. If I wasn't prepared, then I knew I might be in trouble. So that's the same thing with life.
Yeah.
You know, the better you're prepared, the more you're able to take whatever's handed to you. If you're not prepared, look out. It might be a bumpy ride.
How do you connect the dot? How do we connect the dots from working in Colorado to then NBC 10 and then eventually making your way after that brief stop in Milwaukee to ABC 6?
Yeah. So you mean how did the journey happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens is someone hears about, or someone looks at your work, they have consulting agencies. So while you're on somebody's, you're working someplace, I should say, the competition sometimes will tape you and send you, are we frozen?
It looks like you are frozen.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. There, I see you pop up again. I'm sorry about that. My Wi-Fi in here is not that good. So sometimes the competition to get you out of the market may send a tape of yours to a consulting agency.
Right.
Then the consulting agency tries to shop you around. In my case, that happened, but I didn't take the job that was on. They offered one in Ohio, and it was Maggin and Associates in Cedar Rapids. But my journey was really after I got that first job, I worked with a gentleman named Vince Gibbons in Denver. Vince went to Sacramento. I went to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Then Vince came to Channel 10 in Providence. They were looking for a sports guy to go to back up Chris Clark. And Vince said, hey, I've got a friend in Cedar Rapids. A lot of this business is knowing your friends.
Yeah.
And so they gave, they looked at my tape and said, yes, we'll hire you. And so I did the 2.5 years there. And so Vince and his wife was the producer. Vince left, went to Milwaukee. His wife became the producer of PM Magazine. They called me up. Hey, would you be interested in coming out here and doing this? And so I went out and just looked at it and I said, yeah, this is something I could do. And so I spent 3 years there, but I really missed the daily sports thing. I talked to Paul Molitor, who was, a number of athletes, but Paul Molitor was one of them with the Brewers. And so I did a story on him and some of the sports guys, but basically I was doing things on totem pole makers, and it was a variety of things.
Yeah.
And I really kind of want to get back to sports, what I really love to do.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm sure in that situation you really have to learn to appreciate what you have and know that you want to stick to what you want. I also read somewhere, not somewhere. It must have been the press release or something on the ABC6 website when you retired, and obviously I can tell it from just this. And when my father, who coaches the South Kingstown tennis team at the high school, but when he told me, I told him we were going to do this.
So yeah, Coach Carr, Andy Carr. Okay, now I'm putting two to two together. And Steve, Steve Mook is a good friend of mine. Stephen was on that team and the assistant coach and everything. Yeah, well, great.
Yeah, he was there for a few years. But when I told him that I was going to get in contact with you and set this up, and I told my mother as well, and they both said, how nice of a guy you are and how one of the nicest guys out there in the world. And I can tell by this and just positivity and whatnot that you're like that. For you, does being known as one of the nicest guys around hold more value to you than maybe the awards that you won or the stories that you were able to cover?
Absolutely. Yeah. As I told my children, your words are one thing, but what is your character? If you don't have character, what is your value? What are you passing on? So I think that your words speak to your heart and speak of your character. And I have always been one that has emphasized, being authentic, being real.
Yeah.
And to be a person of character, somebody who means something to the world, because we're kind of in an age where character is not so important anymore. It's kind of shifting with the tides.
Yeah.
So character is things like, I did, I went into elementary schools and I did this program called Character Counts. I don't know if you remember that, but it talked about like 6 principles, honesty and integrity, there were 6 different things in this, and I really resonated with that program because those are the lasting characteristics of a person. That's what's going to be known and what's going to help you be known as a difference maker in society. It's again, we're in kind of shifting sands here now.
Yeah.
Where, a lot of people just kind of go with the flow or go with whatever's the current issue. And we're kind of butting heads in our country here now because people are digging into what their opinion is on things instead of trying to find a solution somewhere in the middle. And so I'll be honest with you, I'm a little worried about where we are headed as a country right now. We need to be a lot more, we need to be more loving toward one another. Absolutely.
Well, it's very scary, and it's very scary when one person of a certain group or whatever takes control of a situation, and then stuff starts to go all loose. But this isn't Dan York show where
Well, I will say, Nolan, one of the values of sports is learning how to cooperate and learning how to blend with a team. The team thing is one of the greatest values in sports, because even on a tennis team, where you're individual, but you operate as a team, you encourage each other, you support each other, you help each other. The team aspect is one of the issues that society could learn a lot from sports. The way even losing teaches a lot about yourself. Now, you guys didn't do that much with the tennis thing.
Not much.
Yeah, but losing also points to your character.
Yeah.
How do you lose? How do you come back from losing? It also teaches you something about yourself. You have to dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
Everybody can win, right?
Exactly.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's easy. Lose, and that's when you have to learn about yourself, because you learn who you are, how you handle.
For you, now that you're retired, is it easier to watch the men? I mean, because you've been talking about the men's team, and now the women's team is sort of getting back into promise land. Is it easy now for you to watch these teams, or is it hard now that they're doing so good that you're not covering them?
No, it's easy because I can see the whole game. I don't have to worry about, okay, what's the deadline for getting the highlights on? For you or I, if they started the game at 7:00, you could only shoot like the first hour and a half, maybe the game. They have to drive like crazy to get back to Providence to get it edited. Plus, that's just one part of your show. You have other highlights. Maybe the Celtics are playing that night, or maybe one of the Bryant is playing or something. So you have to edit all of these highlights, write the script so the director knows what's going on. And then you get everything edited and put into a framework of a rundown, and then run out on the set to do it. So sometimes that's what Nick is so good at. He's a very fast editor and a very good writer. So sometimes you go out and you do the tease out on the set, then you run back to your desk, which is on the other side of the newsroom, and you send the video that had been waiting to be sent, and then you run back, sit in your chair, and then deliver the sportscast. Meanwhile, your heart's going and sometimes it doesn't make it, so you have to do the tap dance.
Yeah. Before I let you get on your way, I want to end with the segment I like to call the one word challenge. And for those out there who don't know what it is, it's a segment where I like to take my guest and I throw out a few words, names, people, whatever, that have some connection to them, and they try their best to say a word or two that best comes to their mind. So, Mr. Ken, are you ready for this?
This is good. Yes, I hope so.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, small but mighty.
University of Colorado.
I graduated there. I love the Buffs. I miss Boulder.
Denver.
Denver, first TV job, now too big.
Don Coyne.
The fastest editor in America and a great guy to work with.
ABC6.
ABC6, wonderful career, lots of changes.
High school sports.
My favorite.
And
It's
finally,
where sports is real.
and finally, Ken Bell.
Would like to think that I made a difference in people's lives.
Well, Ken, I want to say, as I did at the beginning before we got going here, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and week to help me out with this. It means a great deal.
Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry, it was kind of a cat and mouse game to find a time, but so thankful to talk with you.
No
Give my
problem.
best to your dad and your mom, will you?
Oh, I definitely will. And for all those out there who enjoyed this week's episode, do us a favor, subscribe on YouTube, like on the audio platforms, leave a comment, share, subscribe. It helps grow this. And one day when you look back at this, you're going to say, wow, this is a pretty amazing episode here, pretty powerful. And for all updates and news regarding future episodes, follow on Twitter at Nolan Carr Night and on Instagram, Nolan Carr at Night. And in the words of Johnny Carson, I bid you all a heartfelt good night. See you next time.